who controls the rights to Mauna Kea is a very interesting question because of the term rights and control. Those two terms may or may not be synonymous, or they could be contradictory. At this point, those two terms are contradictory because control is by one party and rights belongs to somebody else. So the control right now is with the state of Hawaii simply because they have taken that control and are exercising that control because of their police power and the laws that they're applying. But who really has authority or the rights there on the Mauna goes back to who actually has the rights or who has jurisdiction and who has sovereignty in the Hawaiian Islands. Never surrendered, or the rights, or let's say the claim, the sovereignty of the Hawaiian Islands was never extinguished. So the Hawaiian Kingdom is still the sovereign of the Hawaiian Islands. Now, as far as rights, we come down to property rights and things like that. That was pretty much settled during the Hawaiian Kingdom days under the Hawaiian Kingdom laws, in which the certain lands were assigned to various people as privately owned lands. So what is now today called the ceded lands, called by the United States the ceded lands, were actually the crown lands of King Kamehameha III and his successors and heirs, which means that what Kamehameha III had done back in the time of the Great Mahele is that he reserved the right as a private citizen or as a private owner to those lands. Roughly 600,000 acres of the islands of Hawaii are in his, but some say 900,000 acres. But it's within the private ownership of King Kamehameha III and his heirs and successors, to never be alienated from this ownership. And then many of the other lands were also assigned in that same fashion. That is, allodial titles were given to various people who Kamehameha III and the legislature and the rules of the laws of the Hawaiian Kingdom assigned these different lands. So who has the rights is that it boils down to the one that has the ultimate right on that land is the owner of that land, or the title holder of that land, which would be the heirs of Kamehameha III. So they are the ones that have the right. Now, those lands are often treated as part of the lands of the Hawaiian Kingdom. That would be a separate group of lands called government lands, which was assigned to that. So the top of Mauna Kea currently is part of the estate of, or the holdings, title holder of Kamehameha III and his heirs and successors. So they have the ultimate right. The state of Hawaii actually has no rights at all to any lands. And even in the territory, in the Newlands resolution that created the territory of Hawaii, there was never actually a positive statement regarding the lands of the Hawaiian Islands. In other words, the Newlands resolution never actually said that these islands, particularly the main Hawaiian Islands, are in the jurisdiction of the territory of Hawaii or in the jurisdiction of the United States. All it said was that they assumed the ownership of lands from the previous owner, which was, and from the previous entity that was in place, which was the Republic of Hawaii. But they too did not own the lands, because the lands were never transferred to the Republic of Hawaii from the Hawaiian Kingdom. So the state of Hawaii was given these lands by the United States when the lands went from, or let's say the claim of the land titles went from the territory of Hawaii, or from the Republic of Hawaii to the territory of Hawaii to the state of Hawaii. So all of those transfers were illegal transfers. So the lands never transferred from the Hawaiian Kingdom in a chain, in a direct line of ownership to the state of Hawaii. So the state of Hawaii actually owns no lands in the Hawaiian Islands. It just purports to own the lands, and it leans on the United States laws to help them enforce that claim. It soon unraveled because the real issue on the Mauna Kea and the opposition to TMT is not so much the sacredness of Mauna Kea, but it boils down to who owns those lands, who has, as you said, who controls the rights to those lands. So to answer your question, after going about all that, who controls the rights to those lands is the Hawaiian Kingdom, or even more specifically, the heirs and descendants of Kamehameha III.